I need to talk about how fun Metro Awakening has been. It's already a rare occasion that we get VR games in the first place, but it's even more rare that we actually get a AAA developer working on a VR game. But to have another huge franchise jump onto the VR wagon is so good and so refreshing. So I just want to talk about how great it is to have Metro here and to pose the question, if Metro Awakening saved VR, maybe that's a little dramatic. Maybe it's just something like, I don't know, did it redefine the genre of VR? Could it be the new Half-Life Alyx? There's a lot of questions up in the air. But if you haven't gotten the chance to play this game, I would highly advise you jump on it because it is quite the experience. So first, let's talk about the story. Let me break it down for you. I'm not gonna fucking do the splits, hell no, bro. The main story takes place roughly around 5 years before the first Metro game, and it doesn't even include anything about Artyom. Instead, it focuses on Serdar, wandering through the Metro tunnels, first gathering meds for his wife, which she ends up wandering throughout the entire Metro alone just because she heard her dead son calling to her through the tunnels. Now, you gotta find her ASAP because, well, she's your wife and her son is dead. And if you have any context to the Metro series at all, you know that the Metros aren't necessarily a family-friendly place. That's basically it. You're dropped into it and you're set to explore and meet the cast of characters from there. All which are very, very well performed, captured, and voice acted. Like, I would say to the comparison of Half-Life Alyx, to be honest with you, which, because that's one of the highest quality games you can get on VR, you're probably gonna hear a lot of comparisons to it in this video, realistically. This game does a fantastic job of establishing its environment and building tension throughout the story, which, if you've watched a bit of my playthrough, there's a lot of tension. Yes, fuck you, shameless plugin, because is it a shameless plugin if it's my own content? If you're already... What constitutes a shameless plugin? Yes, I'm plugging it in because I was anxious to do it in the first place. Leave me alone. This also contains a lot of really cool mechanics and attention to detail that you wouldn't see in the average VR title, unless it was backed by AAA companies, usually. Overall, it gave me quite the eye-opening experience and a good level of pacing that doesn't make things feel rushed so far. Like, you don't even get a gun to shoot in the game until like damn near the end of chapter 1, like an hour in. For the most part, I was just walking around, watching the interactions happen, like watching what takes place, and it really, really helps you like get grounded into the environment and the story of the game. Along with that, how spaced out finding weapons are in this game really, really helps each and every weapon feel like a very unique and useful discovery in comparison to what you're gonna be facing. So things actually feel deserved. When talking about the actual function or physics to the game, I'm just gonna start off by saying don't expect too much. Now, this isn't to be mean or to call it bad, but I know personally I really like the interaction elements of a lot of VR games. I like to be able to pick up things around me. I like to be able to knock things over, and I really, really like if that immersion is there. Now, when it comes to that sort of side of VR gaming, it doesn't really do that much. Instead, it switches its immersion more towards the narrative and the characters. There's like a decent amount of interactable things to play around with, but it's nothing crazy. Like, you don't get to grab every single object within sight. Nothing like a Bone Labs or a Blade and Sorcery. So it instead just makes sure to focus more on its narrative and world building for its immersive purposes. Now, my guess is that there's a limited amount of interaction for the very reason that, let's be real, it's on Quest. And that's not to shit on Quest whatsoever as a PC VR player that's low-key jealous on Quest getting all the exclusives. Quest is like one of the highest selling consoles just generally at this point. So it makes sense to be able to like aim towards that target audience. And although PC players come second in line when it comes to the games, why do you gotta do us like this? It absolutely makes sense for it to be more optimized towards Quest players. I'm just happy at the fact that I am able to enjoy the experience on PC VR and have the higher graphic fidelity, of course. Weird to have cross-platform VR games when VR itself should just be the console, but that's another argument. So with that in mind, there's no need to program some grabbable objects with everything that doesn't, immediately set your Quest on fire. So their main focus is that. It's clear that it's not the priority, and that's completely fine because it doesn't always need to be. Most games generally don't have to have a specific physics system. That being said, the piano is fucking awesome, and it is programmed just as well as Half-Life Alyx is. Oh my god! Along with that, after about a couple weeks of release, they actually did a patch that made me extremely happy because it was initially released without individual finger tracking, which I can just say, no matter whether you're Quest, whether you're Steam VR, whether you're the fucking Google phone thingy, whatever I don't even know what it is. Individual finger tracking needs to be in all games ever, bro. It's, oh my god. You know how sad it is to spend money out the ass for a very, very cool controller that basically nobody else can see, I realize, most of the time, unless I'm on like VR chat. But you can, and you could just do this all the time, or you could just flip people off. I'm sorry, the expressions I made in the middle of my gameplay just helped enhance my experience that much more. Just because, let's be real, in a lot of the situations VR games put you in, I'd be flipping people off nonstop. It just really helps display my current mood. To expand more on actually bridging the gap between PC, VR, and Quest, how most games are made nowadays in Quest's interest, I'm just glad that in Metro's case, it was available for everybody, because to me, personally, exclusives are putting a completely unnecessary wall between an already niche side of gaming. And I know niche can be kind of weird to say considering how big VR is and the amount of users that I just said bought a Quest. But also, if you're a VR player, feel free to comment down below. How many of you guys just leave your VR systems collecting dust? It may have made an immense amount of sales at the prime time of COVID, and it might have been making crazy sales for the Quest 3 and the 3S. But still, how often do you guys genuinely use VR? On a weekly, if not monthly basis? I would still say it's relatively niche because not a ton of people are playing and it isn't the biggest side of content. Not that it's ever going to be, let's be real here. But it isn't as big as it is, which still feels relatively niche. So with as niche as it is, wow, I'm saying niche a lot. Why put a wall between such a small audience already? In comparison, small. It sucks not being able to play Assassin's Creed or Batman, even though we're just basically on the exact same console. That's like the Nintendo Switch Lite having exclusive games from the Nintendo Switch, or the PS5 Pro having exclusive games from the PS5. Which, is that even like necessary? Was the PS5 even worth it? Didn't it like increase everything by like 5 frames? Like something completely unnoticeable? That is a whole different tangent. Generally though, like why does it make sense to segregate it? Obviously there's multiple layers beyond why there's exclusives for the meta specifically, but just generally speaking, how does that make sense? So rant aside, Metro has done something big. It continues to push the niche of VR closer to the mainstream. Even throughout some of the TikTok videos, people were mind blown at the fact that Metro was in VR. And it actually got people talking about VR a little bit more that wouldn't usually go for those platforms. What could be said started from Half-Life Alyx. I would even say way before then, but I'd say that Alyx probably was the huge predecessor of really bringing VR to the mainstream. It started to get a lot more recognition overall, which is awesome. More companies are starting to pay attention to the actual potential of VR games. We already have Assassin's Creed, Batman, Half-Life, Metro, soon to be Alien along in the arsenal, Walking Dead, and several other titles on the way. As well as VR starting to really establish its own franchises with the polished games like Skydance's Behemoth. I haven't played that game yet, to be honest with you. It's just really starting to pave the way for VR titles in general, and it feels like it's being taken more seriously. Just in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot's changed, and I only hope that things become better and better. Now, with all that I've said overall, you might be still wondering, is it worth it? Nigga, I've been glazing the fuck out of this game for like the last 10 minutes or so. What do you think so? I'm obviously saying yeah. Now, alongside its very impressive performances, really solid graphics, at least in PC VR, I feel like Meta's still pretty good as well, right? I don't know. Engaging and captivating environments. Accessibility and gameplay. You might be asking, does this game save VR? Or even does it redefine VR as a genre? No. Fuck no, bro. But although it might not be a genre-defining experience, I think that it continues to push the needle towards the greatness that VR can become. Because besides the point of how impressive the game is from a gameplay and performance standpoint, there is still a couple things that seem to hold it back, which isn't even necessarily just a failure on their end, it just didn't take priority when it comes to crafting their narrative, or their game overall. Yet if this was like the top tier VR game, and this is where we were as of right now, I don't really know how, I'm not describing this well. I'm using a lightsaber as my example. If this is where VR starts, I don't know where I'm going with this example. This is the potential that VR can be at, right? I'm pretty sure I was supposed to flip it this way. This is the potential that VR can reach, like the greatest potential ever. And this is where it starts. And we were originally here, we just moved a little bit closer. I don't know if this lightsaber analogy is really helping, but this shit is very loud. Basically what I'm trying to say without a very stupid analogy is Metro is helping us progress in great VR titles. Although it might have not delivered the greatest experience of my entire life, it was still a very, very enticing and enjoyable experience overall. I would wholeheartedly put Metro in like my top 5 list of VR games of all time, which is saying a lot. And I feel like this game, in terms of just like its accessibility and complexity, is also just a pretty good introduction for new VR players as well. As someone who hasn't necessarily actually played much of the other Metros, yes, shut up. I know, I played Last Light a little bit, not Last Light, I played 2033, and I'm going on to the other ones. I have them all, trust me. The funny thing is, I watched like a 3-hour summary on just like all the Metro games because I really wanted to get context on like everything, and then after I spent 3 hours watching this shit, I only then realized this was a prequel, so like everything I watched did not matter whatsoever. But yes, in terms of getting this game, I think it is a truly worthy experience. I warn you though, there will be jump scares, and if you have arachnophobia, luckily I believe that there's a mode for that, but there's a lot of that, so just, if you haven't already, I've actually decided to try out playthroughs as well as just other videos in general, so feel free to check that out. I hope you guys have been enjoying the new content on the channel, and I appreciate you guys for staying here and watching and enjoying my content. Wow. For once I actually kind of finished the video without immediately saying leave.